Hi everyone, in this video we are going to start our exploration of the Power BI transforming data using Power BI Power Query Editor. So to begin, we're going to import data from Excel, and the file that we're importing is a report that we generated from Salesforce. So we're going to go ahead and grab that report. The one that I want is this one here, and we'll go ahead and open. Now, once you get the navigator window open, you're going to want to click on the table of that file, and then you're going to want to click transform data. Now we have our file open here, and it's time to transform some of this data. So you can see we've got a bunch of columns that have null values. We've got rows that have report description. If we go all the way down to the bottom of our report, you're going to see we've got more rows down here with report descriptions and null values. So we've got a little bit of cleanup that we need to do. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to remove some rows. We want to remove these top rows. So we've got we've got about 1 through 10 here, right to row 11 where our report headers start. So we're going to remove the top 10 rows. And every time we refresh this data set, it's always going to be like this, that the top 10 rows of the report are going to be information that we do not need. So we can go ahead and use this button here for remove rows, and then it gives us the option to remove top rows. So we select that, and then we go number of rows 10 and click OK. That's going to remove those rows there. The next thing that we can do is we can make our headers as the first row. So you can see that right now the row 1 has our headers, and we want to make that these column names here as the header types. So we go and click on use first row as headers, and that's going to update that for us. Now, as you saw before, we've got some bottom rows that also contain some data we don't need, including this total and sum row. So I'm going to take out the bottom 6 rows here. So that's going to be remove rows, remove bottom rows, and then number of rows is 6, and we'll take those out. So once again, we can scroll back to the bottom and we can see that those are now gone. Great, so we've cleaned up our rows. Now we've got a couple of columns to clean up. So we've got this first column here, and it's already selected. So I can just go ahead and click remove columns. And I also want to remove this column 3 because it's another column that just contains null values. And that's just a result of the way that the Salesforce report is formatted. So we're going to go ahead and delete that one. Now I'm going to scroll through all the way to the end of my report, and I'm going to see that there's another column here that's got null values, and I'm going to delete that one as well. So now we've removed all of the columns that we do not need. There might be some other columns in here that you don't need that were in the report, but you don't want to bring into Power BI. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and remove this last column here just because I don't want it. Now you'll notice that the applied steps here is being updated as you're making these changes and transforming this data. So I removed several columns, but there's only one applied step for removed columns there, right? So let's say you want to bring those columns back. You don't want to leave those out. You can actually just go over here and click on the X here, and it will undo the steps that you just did. Likewise, you can go back in time and see all of the previous steps that you made simply by clicking on them. So if I go to this step here, it will basically revert back to what you saw previously before you added all of these steps here. So now the next thing I need to do is I need to do some basic formatting. You can see that Power BI actually applied some steps for me without me doing anything. And that's this change type step here. If I go back to that, I'm going to see that these columns up at the top here, you can see that they have these ABC 1, 2, 3 And that represents the type. If I right click on the column and I go to change type, I can see that there's different types here, but the ABC123 column is simply the text type. So if I go and I go back to where we were before in these steps, I can see that Power BI actually automatically changed the type of some of these columns to reflect the values that are in them. So in this case, this is a date column here. I've got a bunch of dates here, and the title of the column is start date. So Power BI recognized that, and it converted the type from text to date. And so if I right click on this now and I go to change type, I can see that date is selected. So I don't need to do any further steps, which is great. And that's true for the rest of these columns here. I can see, okay, here's product code, that's a text type. Here's a binary type, and so forth and so on. So that's really great. We can just kind of take a peek across here and see, are there any that need to be changed? And if there were, then I would just right click on that column and go to change type, and I can change to a different type. So if I check text, you can see that it did convert that back to text, but I want to leave that as a date because it is a date. And then I can change it back to a date, and I can just click on the replace current. And now it's done that for me. I don't need to do that actually because I didn't change any, I don't want anything changed from the way it was. So let's remove that step. So now we've checked to make sure that all of these columns are the types that we want. Now there's a few things that I want to do to the values in these columns. So for example, I have this column here, which is represents a checkbox in Salesforce, where the checkbox, if it's checked, that's a value of true, and if it's not checked, it's a value of false. But I don't want it to say true. I want it to say yes, and I want false to say no. So what I can do is I can change those values. So I can right click again on the column, and I can click replace values, and I'm going to replace true with yes. But you're going to see that this is going to result in an error. I'm not able to click OK. I'm not able to finish this replacing values. And if I click on this error icon, I get enter a logical value. Well, the reason for that is because the value or the type of column is actually true false, and we're not able to convert values of a true false. So I need to first change this to text. And once I do that, then I can go to replace values, and now I can replace true with yes. And I click OK, and that changes those values there so we can work with them. And one more time, I want to replace false with no. If there's any, they will now be changed. So that is going to be it for this video. Hopefully you found this video of transforming data useful. Once you've finished transforming your data, all you're going to do is go to the button here and click close and apply, and that will apply all the transforming that you did to this data set and apply it to work with further in Power BI. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.